The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September 2012 Polyphonic on Campus webinar. This is Steve Danu from polyphonic.org, and we're very glad that you're joining us here with others from around the country for what will be our first in a series of 3 webinars this fall. Tonight, we're excited to have Jeffrey Fisher, an audio-video artist and trainer with us. And he's going to discuss what you're seeing on the screen right now, Eat, Sleep, Make Art. Definitely an intriguing title, so we're looking forward to that. In addition to tonight's webinar, we also have webinars for October 15th and November 19th. You can read more about both of those webinars and sign up for them on our website, polyphonic.org/oncampus. And we also have all of our previous webinars recorded and available for your on-demand video viewing convenience, again on our website, polyphonic.org/oncampus. And this webinar is being recorded and will be up there shortly, and we'll be when it's available. Just a couple of things before we begin tonight's presentation. Your phone or computer audio, depending on how you're listening in, is muted by default just to cut down on background noise. But we absolutely encourage you to ask questions, and there's a couple of different ways to do that. First of all, if you would like to have your line unmuted at the end of the presentation, we're happy to do that. There's a yellow hand button on your webinar control panel. If you hit that button, that will let us know that you'd like to be unmuted and actually ask Jeffrey a question. If you'd prefer, you can just write a question into us. There's a question box on the webinar control panel. You can just type the question in there, send it in, and we'll read it for you at the end and talk to Jeffrey about it. Without any further ado, I do want to go ahead and welcome Amy Rogers, who's with us and who is Director of Self-Employment in the Arts, which is a wonderful organization dedicated to helping artists gain the entrepreneurial knowledge and skills needed in the 21st century. And Amy is going to introduce our speaker this evening.
Thank you, Steve. We're very excited to participate in this webinar. Just to give you a little bit about Self-Employment in the Arts, which we refer to as SEA or SEA. Each year we hold an annual conference, which has been outside of Chicago in February. In addition, we have regional events hosted by St. Olaf College in Minnesota. That event is coming up the end of September, and we have our first regional, actually downtown Chicago, in conjunction with the CEO National Conference on November 1st through the 3rd. Kind of later in the year, we'll also have regional events at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and Drury University in Missouri. More information about our events, along with resources, educational videos, and lots of links can be found at www.selfemploymentinthearts.com. It's an honor to have Jeffrey Fisher present at our events and serve on our advisory board. Fisher is an in-demand audio-video artist and trainer providing music, audio, writing, consulting, training, and video production services. He's an award-winning filmmaker, and his latest book and DVD combo is Soundtrack Success, the Digital Storyteller's Guide to Audio Post-Production. As a lifelong artist entrepreneur, he provides a unique art-biz perspective.
Why, thank you, Amy. I appreciate that so very much. Can't stand self-employment in the arts. Definitely go to the website and check out all that we have at the website, as well as also make plans now to come out to either one of the regionals or certainly the main event, which is usually in Lisle, Illinois, outside of Chicago. So welcome, everybody. Let me click here back to my presentation here. Whether you're a writer, a musician, a filmmaker, a photographer, a dancer, a painter, a sculptor, a graphic artist, or you pursue any other creative endeavor, you've made a gutsy decision to be an artist. I salute you. Welcome to the club. Now, it's not going to be easy. There are a lot of roadblocks ahead. There are a myriad of distractions and a whole lot of stuff to learn. And there's going to be many naysayers along the way, people urging you to be realistic, to get a real job. and then not to mention your own doubt. But you have to persist in order to really make it. You have to find ways to overcome all these possible negatives. You need to build your confidence. You need to have the discipline to go forward. Most of all, you need to draw from your art's positive energy and use that to both feed and nurture your soul. Let's face it, you make art because you have to. You need your art to live, and that echoes what writer Paul Auster said about being a writer. So art is something you need to do. And as Auster further says, and I paraphrase, art's purpose is penetrating the world and finding your place in it. So welcome to the seminar today. I suspect that you're here looking for a lot of answers, and I'm afraid that this talk may raise more questions than provide those concrete solutions. My aim here is to deliver some provocative ideas, many in the form of questions that only you can answer. Your art life is a personal journey, and I'm just one of many guides who will help you along the way. Like the coach of a long-distance runner, I can give you some tips and help you avoid some common pitfalls. But the fact is, you run the race yourself. It's your own journey of self-discovery. Now, I've been living my own art life for, I don't know, about 3 decades now, and tonight I'll share some of my experiences along the way, but my real intention is more to push you along and to help you build your own art life. So how can you make the art that you love and make a living doing it? That's the central question tonight, one of many, and one I hope you can answer before we are done. So welcome, everybody. Let's get started down here. What you might want to have handy is a good piece of paper and a pen or pencil or whatever, crayon, whatever you like to use, because we're going to be asking a bunch of questions along the way and getting you to answer those yourself. Unfortunately, we can't really do this in a situation where we're going back and forth, but I'll leave that to you to fill in the blanks that way. So I ran across this not too long ago, and a wonderful quote from Francis Ford Coppola, who made such films as Apocalypse Now, and he said this, who said art has to cost money, and therefore who says artists have to make money? This really made my blood boil. Francis Coppola makes a lot of his money today by selling wine, if you're not familiar with that. And so he makes this living that way, as it were, and that allows him to do his art. So I don't agree with this. I don't know if you agree with it or not. There seems to be this perception that art and business don't mix, much like vinegar and oil. But I think that there are ways to make it, and I've certainly evidenced my career has managed to make the art that I want to do and still put bread on my table. So how do art and business really work together? You just got to shake it up a little. Shake it up, and whatever that it is, you've got to find your own it, whatever and wherever your it may be. Because once you do really find that balance of your art life, it's a great place to be. Nobody else can take it away from you, and it's a wonderful club to join. So hopefully we'll get you into that club as we move on. There is this image of the thriving artist, and then of course there's that counter image of the starving artist, some mythological thing that you have to be a starving artist. That's the only way to be an artist today. That your piggy bank is always going to be running on empty, and I disagree with that. I think with making just the right kinds of decisions, and not selling out either, just making the right kinds of decisions, pursuing the right areas that work with your art in a marketable way, that you can indeed make it rain, that you can put bread on your table. And you can do your art so you can feed your body with the bread that you make and nurture your own soul with the art that you make as well. But one thing to caution you, you can't really run it as some little backyard gambit. You really have to be a little bit more serious about combining your art and business in ways that take you to the next level, that bring the ideas that you need and bring them together in the right manner. And that's what I hope to give you some ideas on how you can do that, kind of put a plan together that's going to intersect and converge all of the best parts that you know along with things that maybe you don't know and need to learn, and put together the balance, the art life that you really need to put together. I'll also share some things that maybe you shouldn't do. There's certainly a lot of things, and some of those, unfortunately, you're going to discover on your own. I've made millions and millions of mistakes. Okay, maybe not millions and millions, but lots of mistakes, and only the fool doesn't learn from all of those mistakes. So one of the first things is to have a kind of a vision where your art really reflects you, to really be yourself. And what do I mean by that? It can be handy to sometimes emulate others and maybe take the same kind of journey, but there can be a downside to that as you don't really find what you bring to the table. Because when you really are your own special area, where it's your particular approach to things, that's where your art is really going to succeed. And so related to that, and it's more about building a life. I don't really separate my business, if you will, my art business, from my life. To me, they're very integrated. I keep them together in as many ways that I can. I love to do the things that I do. I get to make movies, I get to make music, and I get to do solitary tasks like writing long books. And I love to be able to do that and combine all those things, because to me it isn't really about a job. It isn't really necessarily even about a career or careerism or anything. It's about building a life and then being able to live it, being able to use your art to fund your lifestyle in the way that you want it to be. And related to that, you've got to dream big, and I think that's the hardest thing to do. It's fun to dream big. It's fun to dream in crazy ways, but you have to dream big. You really have to do it, because it's the only way to find the right path to do it. So think about dreaming really, really, really big. But what about that combination of art and business? We'll keep coming back to this over and over again. Is it possible to combine your creative work and still do what some people call the evil of business? And I think there are some ways, and let's work through this a little bit. What are the when, who, how, what, why, where? What are all of the questions? So get that pen and paper ready and be ready to answer these questions. So this is one of my favorites. You've probably heard this before, or maybe you've even done this before. But the big question, if you didn't have to work for money, what would you do? What would you do? It's a great question in that it really gets at the root of where some of your passions lie. If you didn't have to worry about money, what kinds of things would you do? Would you travel? Would you do your art? What would you do? Answer that question. For me, it was kind of funny. I had a difficult recording session a few months back, and I had commented to a friend of mine. I said, I should retire. And he said, well, what would you do if you retire? I said, I don't know. I'd probably write a book, work on a film or two, maybe teach a class or two at college. And he goes, that's what you do now. Next question, what's on your list? Everybody should have a bucket list. I think that's it sounds funny, but I think it's really true. One of my students, on her 21st birthday, she started a 21-thing list, all the things she was going to do during her 21st year. And I thought it was a great idea. It's a great way to kind of plan. It's a great way to prioritize, a terrific way to just kind of build up some expectations. So when it comes to kind of your art life, what are things you wanted to do? I knew I wanted to score movies. I knew I wanted to do audio post-production where you work on the whole soundtrack. And I've been fortunate that I've actually been able to do those things. And I read about those things back in my youth and put in place the kinds of plans that I needed to do to get there. But you got to have that list before you can really, really get started on that kind of thing. So it's about thinking. It's about sitting and coming up with ideas and brainstorming in as many ways as you possibly can and coming up with the ideas that are right for you. So what are some of the key areas that you need to define? You need to define the art that you want to make. You really need to come up with the exact specifics, the particulars. Are you working on art-related products? Are you working on art-related services? What is the art that you want to make? If you can't define it, how can you possibly build a business and build a life around it? Second is the people you want to work with. I'm really fortunate to work with some great clients, to work with some great filmmakers, some amazing musicians, and others along the way. And in some cases, I've rearranged my schedule and done other things so that I could particularly work with someone on a project. And it's an enviable position to be in, and I've been fortunate to be able to do that. That should be the same with you. Who do you want to work with? What about the money you want to make or that you need to earn? You need to kind of define that because it gives you some insight into the choices that you need to make, which leads directly into that lifestyle. What is the lifestyle that you want to lead? Everybody's is a little bit different. Some people want to have a lot of freedom and be able to travel at a moment's notice and don't want to be tied down to certain areas. Other people like being tied down and having a more routine kind of thing. There's no right or wrong answer to that question. It's the question and the answer that is right for you. But if you don't really know the kind of lifestyle that you want to lead, you won't really know what kind of money you need to make, and then it makes it more difficult to make some of these choices. And you also want to know the legacy you want to leave. When you're young, you don't always think about that, but as you get a little older, you do start to think about that, the kind of impact that you can have, the art that you can leave behind. In my case, I've got books and movies that I've made, and I teach college as well, and hopefully have an impact on the students there. So having that kind of legacy can be very, very important. A couple of these other questions come from a book that I'd highly recommend that you check out. It's called The Creative Entrepreneur by Lisa Sonora Bean, and it's a kind of an interesting take on sort of defining the major parts of a business, if you will, almost building a business plan, if you will, but in a fairly creative, different level. And so she's actually built the story around building a mandala, which is a Sanskrit word meaning a magic circle. And this particular approach uses 4 large overlapping ovals, which serve as a kind of pathways to creative business design, if you will. And it's these pathways, the way they kind of integrate, that can help you find your way. And so we don't focus on a particular pathway. We will here at first as we move through that. But it's really the intersection. It's how they all kind of converge together that allow you to define and also refine your art life vision. And so we'll go through some prompts that can help you focus on the answers to the questions. And I think it's really important that you're very specific, that you delve really deep into the answers and be honest so that you can find your unique and specific answers to you. And so the way to kind of draw one of the doubts then is to make 4 large overlapping ovals. So if you can draw it like what we have on screen, you get an idea of how these fit together. And we'll go through these pathways here and a bunch of questions and get you thinking a little bit more about how these integrate into building an art life business here. So the first 2 here are heart and meaning. And so what does it mean by that? And so the idea behind this is I'm going to ask you a few questions and provide you a few, and you would answer those inside those little boxes on your own mandala. So the first question really is heart. It's getting at passion. What is it that lights your fire? What is that one thing that gets you up in the morning? And usually it's making your art. I certainly love making music, and that's one of the things that continues to light my fire. Even after all these years, it's still very, very interested. Other questions related to what have you always wanted to do? What is that one thing that you do for its own value? That is, you do it even if you wouldn't get paid for it. And don't say updating your Facebook status. That doesn't count. What matters most to you? What are you passionate about? What is that burning desire to do that you have to do, that you have to accomplish in your life? That's getting at your passions. And what does your creative dream look like? Where do you see yourself? Can you dream up your life in the future? And what are the passions that are going to be there? What is that creative longing going to look like? What do you want to be doing in your future more than anything else? And then there's meaning. What gives you the satisfaction? And there's that question again. What work would you do if you didn't have to work for a living? It's a tough question to answer. Sometimes it's an easy question to answer. But looking at your heart and looking at your passion, that really allows you to get at the root of what it is that you want to do. And if you don't have that vision, it's really hard to work through the other steps. The next 2 pathways are flow and gifts. And so what do we mean by that? The gifts, I think, are pretty obvious. It's the uniqueness that you bring. What is it that you do so well that requires so very little effort? What comes naturally to you? Is there something that people tell you, oh, you're just fantastic, you're an amazing artist, you're an amazing painter, you're an amazing photographer? What are those things? I think it's important to really recognize what those true gifts are. Because when you do recognize them, it allows you to do so much more. And then flow. What do we mean by flow? That's that kind of effortless action. What do? Have you ever done something where you just get absorbed in it for hours and you look up and you don't realize that half a day has gone by? I've had that happen many, many times. You get into that mode where you're just so creative that everything is flowing out. Words are flowing onto the page. The paint is flowing onto the canvas. The Buddhists call that term wu-wei. It's doing without doing. Think of somebody like Michael Jordan. Did he ever think about shooting baskets, on a mechanical lever? Oh, I'm bending my wrist, I'm bouncing the ball, and I'm putting a spin onto the ball. No, you just shoot it. You get so involved into it that you don't even think about it. That's a great place to be. It's one of my favorite places to be in the creative aspect of it. You can't always get there, but when you can get there, it's a wonderful place to be. So what is it that combines your gifts and gets you into that flow? That's where you can really utilize your creative capacity to their fullest. And related to that, you have to also have those things that you absolutely hate to do. I mean, there's an anonymous saying out there that says, don't ever get good at something that you never want to be doing. And I think that's good advice. So everybody should have a to-don't list. Everybody thinks about having a to-do list, but you also got to have that to-don't list, because getting rid of those things that you really hate to do or that you're particularly not strong at doing really frees your mind for doing a lot of other things. The next pathway is profitability and value. What do we mean by that? So value is kind of that market value that you bring in. And a couple ways to look at what you bring to your potential clients really is what problems or pain does your work eliminate? I think for most people that's what it really comes down to. It's either pain or gain. So it's gain, make $1 million, or pain, stop paying too much for your telephone bill. Those kinds of things are the typical value. Now that isn't necessarily artistic examples, but you get the idea that way. What is the pain that you eliminate? What do you do better than the competition? Than what other people are doing? What do you do that's different? How are you helping customers to really get what they want? You have to answer those questions, because when you answer those questions, you get at what it is that you really sell. So how can your art help people get what they want and need? How can you make that happen? And then once you've kind of determined the value, you can look at the profitability of your art business. How can you generate income? What ways can you do that? What money streams can you generate in your art? And then outside of your art, have you failed at your art because you need a day job to support it at first? I don't think so. I think that's actually pretty prudent at times, where you have multiple streams of income coming in that still allow you to do what you need to do, what you have to do. And then when it comes to your art, what different ways can your art generate money for you? If you're offering primarily a service, is there some way that you can offer a product? So like in my example, I compose music, which is essentially a service, but not everybody can afford that service. And so a way to kind of productize that, to make a product of that, is to create what I did is what we call a music library. And so the music library essentially allows people to buy music from the start and use it however they need it. So it's not quite as custom music, but it's still a way to get people in a different way. So you get the idea, the multiple streams of income that you can do. Another thing kind of related to that is really making the money real, so that you really understand where you're going with it. So for instance, just because the math is easy here, let's say you want to make $36,000 a year from your art. What does that really translate into? That means you need to make about $3,000 a month. That means you need to make about $687 every week. That means your art needs to generate about $140 a day, which if you work a typical 8-hour day, and I don't know anybody who does that, but if you do, you need to make $18 an hour. So you've got to think of yourself, as each hour goes by, what are you doing to get that $18 an hour? What are you doing with your art business that's going to generate that money so that you're on track to be there? And so along with that profitability and generating income is you need to have a vision of success, and this kind of gets back to that lifestyle question that I asked earlier. What does it mean being a successful artist? What does that look like to you? Are you going to pattern your particular success after somebody else, or are you going to have your own version of success? When you have your own version, what does it look like? And so having an idea of that lifestyle and having an idea of the money that you need to support that lifestyle allows you to make some good decisions and bring those together. The last couple of pathways are skills and tools. So what are we talking about here? With skills, we're talking about leadership skills. We're talking about people skills. Do you have them? Do you have the necessary skills to kind of run and manage your business, to be able to meet with clients and customers, to meet with peers and other artists that you may work with, to work with maybe some kind of angel investor as well? Do you have those skills to be able to stand up and make a presentation, to do a webinar from your basement recording studio? Do you have those skills? And then business tools. What are those skills? Do you have those business skills? Do you already have them? Or do you not? Are you like totally have no idea what kinds of business skills are out there? Simple things. You might think of marketing and promotion, as well as maybe some accounting or taxing, all those kinds of things. You really need to understand those because, again, they help with the decision making and help you move along with your business. So you need to be able to answer those questions as best as you can. And so, related to that then, is what one business tool would make a significant difference in your art business now? Would that be perhaps a piece of software, maybe something to manage contacts or something to help you manage the inflows and outflows of cash to keep track of the income side of things? What one tool would really make the most significant difference? Do you need some particular tool? And so as you bring all of those pathways together, where they really kind of converge, and you answer the questions that I asked you, along with a few of the other ones that are related to that, that you could really define and refine your art vision. And I hope it's helped you to do that a little bit. Because what it really comes down to is it's how all of these pathways, all of these things fit together that makes this work. So you've got to have the right skills. You've got to know what puts you in the flow and how to maintain that and how to maximize that. You need to know your profitability, your ability to earn money from your art. You need to know about the meaning, what brings meaning to you, what brings meaning to your clients, the business tools you need to take care of those tasks, the gifts you bring, your own personal, unique artistic vision, the value you bring to clients, and of course where that passion is, where all of that is. All of these things in the mandala converge into your sweet spot. And so that's where you need to be. And those are the questions that you need to answer. You need to come up with the right ideas, know where there's problems, and know where you already have those strengths. The problem with ideas is ideas are kind of, like noses. Everybody's got one. So it's more like what you do with those ideas. I know a lot of creative people, and I'm certainly one of them, and I fall prey to this all the time, always having a new idea, another great idea coming up there. And the ideas are fine, but one thing I want to caution you to have is make sure that you have a bias for action. In other words, it's less about the ideas and more about what you do with them. And having ideas sitting around don't really amount to much. You really want them out there working for you. So generating tons of ideas is not always the good idea. What the real idea is generating the right idea that you can take action on. I know you're not always going to be right all the time. Sometimes you're going to make a few mistakes along the way, and that's okay. Accept that. As long as you're not reinventing the wheel all the time, learning from these mistakes really makes a lot of sense. And so, does your mandala reveal more gaps? Were your answers to questions actually not as concrete as you'd like them to be? Well, if that's the case, then you need to really explore the gaps. All those things that you couldn't answer, those are the ones you really need to explore, and then take some action as to what you need to do to overcome that, to solve that gap, to get that business skill, to discover what it is, what profitabilities you have. And then it's a matter of just really moving forward, having that bias for action, moving forward and never really stopping, to just simply taking that journey and continuing on that journey. And now the big question. What single thing, if you did it this year, we've got about 3 months left in this year, would make the biggest difference in your life? What is that thing? And then related to that, of course, because ideas are one thing, how are you going to accomplish that? What single thing, and how are you going to? Everybody doing okay there? I hope. Hope you had filled up your piece of paper well. And so when you start thinking of some of these ideas, or you look at your gaps and you look at where you've got some weaknesses that you need to shore up, then you need to start making some kind of goals. And the right way to do goals is the smart way to do goals. And you may have seen this before, and the reason that you have seen it before is because it works. Because when it comes to really setting goals, the only way to do it is to follow this, to make your goals specific. It can't just be this outlandish kind of idea. I want to start my business. It needs to be a lot more specific than that. And it's got to be measurable. Because if you don't really know a way to measure it, how do you know if you've really succeeded at meeting this goal? So you've got to be able to track it and have that kind of progress. It's got to be achievable. Something that you can do, make $1 billion is certainly a goal. Kind of specific, certainly measurable, but might not necessarily be achievable. And so you've got to kind of look at the resources that you have available, where there's, maybe that's time, maybe that's money, or maybe it's somebody you know, some other assistance you can get that can help you achieve that goal. It's got to be relevant to what you're working on. If it really doesn't have anything to do with your business, it's probably not relative. So what is going to have that positive impact in your art life? And then it's got to have some kind of time deadline. I think that's really, really important. So ways that I kind of come up with goals is to do a little bit of brainstorming first, things that I think I want to do. You know, it's a little bullet list kind of thing. Works pretty well. And then once from that list, you can kind of start to get some of those specific objectives, you know, to make more money that day, to finish my demo or my portfolio kind of thing like that. And then you can put those kind of specific strategies in place that you need to do. All right, I want to get my portfolio done by the end of the year. This and this and this needs to happen. And so this needs to happen by this date. This needs to happen by that date. And that's how you're being smart, setting goals and having a real strategy to what you're working on, as opposed to just kind of simply getting by. And I think those are keys to planning any kind of endeavor, really, is to have a strategic plan where there's both short-term and long-term ideas and a big picture, as opposed to just kind of living in the moment. Another thing I run into a lot is something I call excuse-itis. I hear this a lot. I hear this a lot sometimes with musicians or composers, where I need to get the latest software, and then I'll be ready to put my demo together. I need to have this happen, and then I'll finally be ready to go on with my career. And I think it's very easy to have those kinds of excuses, but you want to really, really do away with them. You know, artists have always had constraints placed upon them, and it's really the true artist, the true innovator, who can deal with those constraints. You know, if you had an unlimited amount of time and an unlimited amount of budget, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to do your best work. I think often it is the constraints, the constraining aspects, a strong deadline, that ultimately can drive your art in a different way. And so with all these questions, it's about really finding and discovering your way. And that, indeed, is quite important. Another aspect I kind of want to talk about is this constructive thinking and feeling and acting. Because we all tend to have more destructive thoughts that way. So what you want to kind of do is do away with the destructive thoughts and really get into constructive thoughts and feelings and actions. And so what do I mean by destructive thinking? Destructive thinking is things like always having stressful thoughts, always think that you can't afford to do things, finding fault with everything, reinventing all the time, arguing all the time, not having any insight, and just being pessimistic and closed-minded. That's destructive thinking, and you definitely don't want to be there. What you want is more constructive thinking, where you're asking the right questions and answering them, and making real decisions, planning, performing research, thinking critically, solving problems, actively imagining, focusing on what it is you want to think. That's constructive thinking, focusing on what you want to create. What's destructive feelings? Things like fear, doubt, anger, sadness, being reactive, always so much drama going on, fear, lack of trust in yourself, lack of trust in others. Those are destructive feelings. You've got to get rid of those and get into more constructive feelings, to enjoy the process, to express appreciation for what others are doing, and practicing gratitude and being aware of negative thoughts, but then dealing with them in a positive, constructive way. Then what about destructive actions? That's just not knowing where to begin, procrastination, being overextended, being too busy all the time, and just isolating yourself and not really working diligently at what you need to do. Whereas constructive action is more like doing the creative work that you need to do, pursuing it, taking things step by step, tracking what you're doing, tracking your progress, doing it step by step, learning your own limitations, and building that, and building from that, balancing your work with rest and other activities. All of those things are what you need to do. So it's very, very important to practice the constructive thinking, feeling, acting, and avoid the destructive. So at this point here in our little talk, you might find that things are all just a complete jumbled mess. And that's good, I think, at this point, really. There's great potential when things seem to be sort of all crazy and mixed up, because when all that tension is there, ultimately some solutions are going to start to come together, and you're going to be able to integrate your art and business. You get these questions answered, and you fill in the mandala, and you will be where you need to be. You will see a path, and you will see a possibility, and that is always the best way to be. So building on that, a couple of things that I think can also help you that way, and sometimes educators don't always like this, but to me, education broadens, training narrows. And what do I mean by that? I mean by the more you know, the more you can do. When you have a much more well-rounded education, you have a greater well to draw from for your creativity. When you learn one kind of thing very, very well, as training tends to do, then you sometimes don't see the big picture. And so I think there's 8 key skills that everybody needs to have. You need to read a lot, and you can't just read within your own area. You've got to read outside and see what other people are doing. So if you're a painter, see what the dance people are doing. You can learn from that. You've got to have writing skills, because we do so much communication and writing, whether that's via email or whatever other ways, promotions on websites, all that kind of stuff like that. Got to be able to do some arithmetic. Don't be afraid of math. It's good to be able to know a little bit about how the money's coming in and going out, and taxes and all those areas that are related to that. Got to be able to have ideas and be able to plan, to be able to put those ideas into action. Be able to do research, and that's beyond just going to Wikipedia. Have great problem-solving skills. Be able to present well. Be able to do a webinar, to stand up in front of a group and talk to them and present your ideas, to be able to do that. And be able to network, to really build a much greater amount of people around you. Because all of that, all of those things, reading, writing, planning, researching, networking with others, all of that takes a whole bunch of little ideas and helps to build that big ideas. And then some key business areas to keep track of. Number one is being able to make, is obviously your art there, is the products and services that you offer, whatever they may be, having a good idea of exactly what those are. And we've talked about that, and we've looked at some questions. But other key business things you've got to be able to do is make sales. You've got to be where the business is. You've got to hang out where the work is. I have sometimes people come to me and say, oh, I want to write music for films. How do I do that? Well, I said, you hang out with indie filmmakers? No. Do you go to film festivals? No. Are you involved in anything with small films or big films or otherwise? No. Well, you got to hang out where the work is or where the people are. You got to be able to sell your ideas. You got to be able to do that elevator pitch. You know, you get on the elevator with somebody who can advance your career. You got one floor. You got 25 words to tell them what you're all about. You need to be able to make those kinds of sales. I can't say enough about promotion. I really think promotion is incredibly important. It's really one of the things you do all the time. And one of my favorite sayings here, does anybody know what this is here? P.T. Barnum once said, without promotion, something terrible happens, and no, your screen did not just go blank or lose your internet connection. Nothing happens when you don't promote. That's what happens. So you've really got to be out there and be a promotion fanatic with everything that you do. And so what kinds of things can you do? everything. You've got to have the website. You've got to use email and chat, newsletters, blogs, participate in forums and wikis that are related to what you do, be bookmarking, post YouTube, Vimeo, and talk about all those things. Be on Twitter, Facebook, all of those really obvious things. But then also on the other side, articles in traditional media and magazines, and sending out something in the postal mail. There's so much email now that getting the postcard in the post is sometimes has a bigger impact these days. Making the right calls. You get the idea. I won't belabor that. But you've got to do everything because that's really what it's all about. You've got to be everywhere. That's the way promotion works so that people come to you first. Next business key there is administration. Business can be kind of crazy and wacky, and you've got to understand your aspect of it. You don't have to know about how every business works. You just need to know how your business works so that you can make the right decisions that way. I can't emphasize enough about how you need to have an advisory network. I like to call it my kitchen cabinet. The president has his cabinet. I have my kitchen cabinet. And I meet with a variety of peers and other advisors at least once a year, and we discuss things about the business and directions we want to go, and I think that's a very handy thing. So find some people that you trust, get them involved in your art business, and then get them to help you to where you need to go. Another business side, technology can be very important. Certainly on the music side and on the filmmaking side, technology is very important, so you've got to be able to keep on top of that. But there's a great danger in that. If all you ever really focus on is the technology side, it can kind of overcome you, so you've got to balance that a little bit. Another key business skill there is planning. We've talked a lot about that already, and that's because it's so very key. You've got to set those goals. You've got to record everything. You've got to review, and you've got to plan, and you've got to continue to do that and see how well you're working. And last on those key business skills is know your financial situation. You don't have to know everybody's financial situation. You need to know your financial situation and your tax situation. You may work with a bookkeeper or an accountant or a tax specialist, but you really need to understand your situation, again, because it's the right information that allows you to make the right decisions when it comes to what you're going to spend your money on, how you're going to invest that, and of course the obvious, how you're going to be able to support your lifestyle. So those keys are very, very important: sales, promotion, administration, technology, planning, and finances. So as we wind down here a little bit, I'd like to share kind of my little philosophy that I use in terms of building my art life. And that is, do what you want to do and do what you love to do and do it in your own way, nobody else's way. Achieve success in your own way and on your own terms. Have your own vision of what it is to be successful and work to get that. Do something that helps others, puts bread on your table, and makes you proud. Those are my three main philosophical points that I live my life on, and I hope that's good for you. And last, it's a really simple three-step process. Do something. Do something. Make a few mistakes, but learn from those mistakes. And then repeat steps 1 and 2 over and over again. And my last favorite piece of advice to give you, that as you're building your art life, have fun. Enjoy the journey along the way. Thank you for listening. I think it's time for some questions. How about that?
Great. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. That's a fantastic presentation and a lot to think about. My head's definitely filled with information and ideas, so that's great. And just to remind people, this webinar is being recorded, so if you want to go back and look at some of these slides again and listen to Jeffrey's points again, you'll be able to do that on our website and obviously share it with others too. I want to remind people how to ask questions. Certainly have some time for that and hope that you have some things you want to ask and discuss. There's a question box on your webinar control panel. You can go ahead and type a question in there, send that in, and I'll read that for us. If you'd prefer to actually have your line unmuted and talk with Jeffrey, we can do that too. There's a yellow hand button on your control panel that you can press, and that'll let us know that you want to do that. So go ahead and send your questions in. In the meantime, I'm just going to throw one out that I was thinking, if you don't mind, Jeffrey. when you were talking about promotion and how important that is, and you had that massive list, I was thinking about with you, if you'd share, if you found one or two of those things particularly useful in your career, if there's been, something in terms of promotion that you've done that you felt has, had the greatest impact.
I would never say it would be a single thing. I think that's the real key, is that you've got to do a lot of things. You've got to consistently do them. And for me, I think it's making regular contact with past clients and customers, and then also still obviously building new ones. You've got to constantly be bringing people in. I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make about promotion is just about the time they get tired of it. That's just about the time that people start to actually notice what you're doing. So you can't give up too soon, and it has to be constant. The best time to start promoting is when you're in the middle of a project, not when it's done and you go, oh wow, I have nothing to do, now I have to start my next project. You've really got to constantly be promoting. And so I do a lot of things, and it's that synergy, really. I've written several books, and so each of the books kind of cross-promote the other books inside there, so that, hey, here's what else that I've done, kind of thing like that. So you're always building that. You write an article, you've got a little box at the end that has your bio, it sends people to your website has that other information. So it's that kind of synergy, so that you're out there, and you've got to do that in a lot of different ways. You can't just rely on one or two things. You can't be in a closed world. But it's not about marketing to the world, though, and I think that's also another key. You've got to really focus on your particular niche and work it really well. Find out where those people hang out that are going to buy or participate in the kind of art that you have to offer, and then really work hard on that group, as opposed to trying and hit the world. Oh, the world will love everything that I do. That's just not going to be true. Find the people who like what you're doing already and really work that group hard with as many different ways that are feasible for your particular art that you offer.
Great. We've had a question come in here that I'm going to read. The question is, how often do you update, revise, toss outdated SMART goals?
I think once you've reached a goal, you can certainly update it a little bit. I do this, I think a lot of people actually do that kind of once a year kind of thing, and I usually do it right around Thanksgiving. I think it's a nice time to do it. Take a little time to review the past year and kind of make some plans for the next year. So I kind of do that yearly audit, and I think that works for me, but of course I've been doing it for a while, so it's a little bit different story. But certainly quarterly, when you're starting out, might be a good idea to really kind of revisit, see where things are, and adjust. These things aren't written in stone. I think that's you got to avoid that trap where oh, this is exactly what I need to do. Some of these things grow, other things happen, other opportunities come along the way, but you don't want to forget where you are or lose place. So regular review makes sense. Again, I do that kind of yearly one. I look at the financial things that I can do, because you can still make some changes before the end of the year. I look at goals accomplished, things missed, and it's probably a bad time to be contacting clients there in December, but certainly getting an idea of maybe what I might launch when the new year comes in. So for me, that once a year regular works well, but just starting out, I think you would do a little bit more.
Awesome, thank you.
Hope that worked.
Yeah. Another question that I was thinking about, you have your bulleted list here on the last slide, and in fact, I should point out that we have contact information here, and I'm sure he's happy to have you contact him with additional questions, and certainly check out his website. And you have some things here: audio, video, music, sound design, a lot of different things that you do. And I'm kind of curious how in terms of branding, how you feel about that. Has that been challenging for you to sort of brand yourself as being able to do all these different things, or have you found that has just worked for you? How do you look at that?
That's a great question. That's a great question, and I think some of it is because it's been over time. You know, I really started out more on the music side, and then moved into more full-blown soundtrack work, doing spots and indie films and things like that. So it sometimes looks a little bit unrelated, but it's really just not. They really are pretty well related. I've always used writing as a way to kind of promote myself. To be able to do the other things that I do, and so I kind of call myself an accessible expert. I guess that's the best way to do it. Where I'm an expert in audio production and video production that way, and so that's what I sell. That's my main kind of consulting gig. That's my main art service that I offer, whether I'm working on a film or a commercial spot or a training video or something along those lines. So those are my main things. But I've always used writing as a way to kind of promote that expertise. And so they fit together. So I'm not writing novels and competing with John Grisham. I'm writing technical manuals for doing soundtrack work for a movie, and so therefore it really does fit together. And I look at that as a way. It's intentional. I like doing the writing in that particular case, and I've written articles for magazines, Mix, and Electronic Musician, and other magazines like that, and that just builds that sort of expert credibility that you need in order to kind of compete in the other side of that. So that's how so the list does look like it's a bunch of different elements, but it's just really not. They're really quite related, especially the way that I market them together in the skills that I bring to the table.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Another question that's come in here is, do you feel that crowdsourcing is becoming more prevalent in making art for a living?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think it ever went away. I mean, it's always been that way. Your artists of the past always had patrons who helped them, to be able to do what they needed to do, and some of that was vanity. In the case of the aristocracy, who may have hired somebody to paint their portrait. But artists have always had people to help them to be their patrons. So whether that's coming from a one-on-one client kind of thing like that, or whether that's things like Kickstarter and those related kinds of things, I don't see that being any different than what's already been. It's just a new way to do it, if you will, being able to use the web, being able to promote it, and so easy for somebody to actually literally give you the money and show it out there, reach all those people. But in terms of the concept, it's just really nothing new. I think it's great. I've certainly helped a lot of young filmmakers out whenever I can. You always wish you could do more. So I like that it's a little bit more ubiquitous than maybe it used to be. It was more of a hidden kind of thing. So yes, absolutely. I think it's a great route to take, and you should pursue that.
Excellent. Another question that's come in here says, what do you consider the pros and cons of building a freelance career versus working for one or more established organizations?
I'm not a big fan of the old freelance word, actually. I always say that as a freelancer, you're really just in business. You run a little small business, and it's just you. And so it's, to me, sometimes it has a negative connotation. I mean, I'm freelancing now because I'm waiting for something better to come along. And I like a little bit of both. I think that I've been fortunate to work with some established organizations, but I don't really look at that so much as having a job, so much as having another gig, if you will. It might be a little bit more regular gig. I think that comes down to finding those multiple income streams that you can generate from your art and from the knowledge that you have. So I kind of fell sort of backwards into teaching. I never ever set out to be a teacher at a college. It was really kind of more accidental that I fell into it. It was a sort of a friend of mine who recommended me, and I went in and taught my first class, and I really, really enjoyed it and decided that I needed to kind of keep that in my life. So I teach at an established organization, but I look at it as just one more gig along with whatever film I'm working on or whatever projects that I have in the works. And so I love the mix of that. That's always, you can get a little more steadier income sometimes that way. And some other benefits that might come from that. I see nothing wrong with balancing those together. Again, if you keep it under that home umbrella, that it's just part of the business. It's just one more revenue stream inside the business.
Great. Yeah, I like the way of thinking about it that way. Let's see. One more question that's coming here. is what role do you think education plays in the arts?
I think I hope I made myself clear earlier. I think education is huge, absolutely. With that little caveat that don't live in just one area. Really, really get that broad-based education that exposes you to real ideas that are out there. I think there's nothing wrong with a good liberal arts education where you get some humanities and some arts and everything else that goes along with that, because I firmly believe that to be a creative artist today, you have to have a deep, deep well to draw on, and you're not going to get that deep well if you focus on just one really small aspect. And if you only master that small aspect, you really limit yourself in that specialization. So I think the more education you can get, absolutely, that will help you grow as an artist and grow as a person, and that's never a bad thing.
Great. Well, looks like that was the last question at the moment. We'll give people another minute. If you do have another question, feel free to write it in. I want to give, if Amy is still on the line, I want to give Amy a chance to come back in if she has anything that she wants to add.
Sure. Obviously, we appreciate Jeffrey and all of his information and feedback, and just kind of on C, what we do at our events are bring people in like Jeffrey to the different conferences and events we have, and present sessions just like he talked about just now. And so it really gives a great opportunity to meet with, brainstorm with, talk with, and learn from artists that are out there, whether it be visual, performing, literary, media arts, all of them, to be able to learn kind of firsthand from those out there currently making their living in the arts.
Wonderful, yeah, and as Jeffrey said, self-employment in the arts, doing some fantastic things, and again, if I remember correctly, the website self-employmentinthearts.com, is that right?
That's correct, yeah. It's all together, one word, no caps, nothing like that, just self-employmentinthearts.com. And there's lots of information. We, too, will have a link to this webinar as well. We have newsletter with lots of resources and lots of links to different organizations like Polyphonic that have lots of resources and information out there just to help those if they're in college or out there, trying to make a go of it, just to kind of give those resources that can help them on their way.
Wonderful. Well, it looks like we are ready to wrap things up for the evening. I want to thank Amy for being here and thank Jeffrey for a really fascinating presentation. And again, keep your eyes on our website, offont.org, for our upcoming webinars, and this webinar will be up there recorded. Again, Jeffrey, thanks so much.
Thank you.
You want to leave us with tonight?
No, thank you. I had a great time, and I hope everybody got a little bit more out of it, or at least some thoughts to or some ideas to think about. And if you have a follow-up question, feel free, drop me a line, email, drop by the website, or drop by Twitter and everything. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Amy, too, as well.
Yeah, thank you, everyone, as well.
Great. Yeah, thanks, everyone, for joining, and we look forward to hearing from you again soon. So everybody have a great night.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.